Have you ever seen a child dancing in the rain, completely lost in the moment, without caring who's watching? That child was Meera. Back then, she was just 7, barefoot, laughing, her red ribbon soaked, and clinging to her damp hair. She didn't know what life had in store for her, but she knew this. Whenever it rained, the world felt brand new, and she danced. Meera was born in a small village, nestled in the arms of the Western Ghats. The roads were muddy, the homes were humble, and the nights smelled of earth and dreams. Her family was poor, but love was never in short supply. Her father was a school teacher, strict but loving. Her mother ran a tiny roadside tea stall where travelers often paused for warmth and a sip of something sweet. Mira had no gadgets, no toys, and no fancy clothes. What she had were books, old, tattered, donated ones, and the magical stories her grandmother whispered at night. Her favorite tale, one about a little girl who could speak to the rain and hear its secrets. She believed the rain spoke to her too. Why do you always run out when it rains, Mira? Her mother would ask. To listen, Mira would grin. It says things no one else hears. As Mira grew, her curiosity grew louder. But in her village, girls weren't encouraged to dream big. The school stopped at grade 8. Most girls were married by 16. But Mira, she was different. One rainy afternoon, while helping her mother at the tea stall, a group of tourists stopped by. Among them was a young woman from Delhi. She spoke fluent English. Mira watched in awe. Every word seemed like a song she didn't know how to sing, but longed to. Later, she whispered to her father, I want to speak like her. I want to understand those words. Her father paused, then knelt to her level. English is just another language, Mira. But if it opens doors for you, then let's find a way. That night, as the rain tapped gently on the roof, Mira made a promise to herself. One day, I'll speak English fluently, not just to understand others, but so the world can understand me. Pause and reflect. Have you ever heard something in nature that felt like a message just for you? Do you remember the first time you were inspired to learn English? Learning English through stories like this helps you feel, imagine, and grow. It's not just about grammar, it's about understanding life in a new language. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments. What is the one dream you're chasing right now? And don't forget to subscribe to Epic English Stories for more inspirational journeys. Every story you hear brings you one step closer to fluency. The next morning, the rain had gone, but the fire in Mira's heart had only grown stronger. She asked her father, Where do I begin? He smiled, pulled an old dust covered trunk from beneath his bed, and opened it. Inside were yellowed English grammar books, children's story books, and a worn out Oxford dictionary. These were mine when I wanted to learn English, he said softly. But I stopped halfway. You won't. From that day, Mira's world changed. She began her mornings not just with tea and chores, but with pages and pronunciation. Her village school didn't teach much English, so she taught herself. Every evening, she would sit outside with her books, repeating words out loud. Apple, ball, cat, rain, run, read. Children laughed at her. Some elders shook their heads. Why waste time? English won't feed you, they said. But her father believed in her. And so did the rain. Whenever it returned, Meera would stand under the sky, arms wide, and whisper the new English words she had learned. Beautiful, hope, freedom. To her, rain wasn't just water, it was applause from the universe. One day, her mother's tea stall was unusually crowded. A teacher from the nearby town had stopped by. He overheard Meera speaking to a tourist in broken but brave English. He was impressed. You speak well, he told her. She blushed. I'm still learning. The teacher offered her a chance to join the school in town. if she could pass a small entrance test. Mira studied like never before. Every word was a step forward, every mistake was a lesson. She passed. It wasn't easy. She had to walk 3 kilometers each way. She carried her books in a plastic bag to protect them from the rain. Her feet hurt, but her spirit soared. She became known in the new school as the girl who dances in the rain and speaks in English. Pause and reflect. Have you ever been laughed at while trying to learn something new? What kept you going? Stories like Mira's remind us you don't need perfect conditions to grow, just a reason strong enough to keep going. Listening to stories in English not only teaches you vocabulary but also gives you motivation. Tell us in the comments what's your favorite English word so far. Like, share, and subscribe to Epic English Stories for more uplifting journeys. Life in town was nothing like the village. The buildings were taller, the people busier, and the language sharper. Mira felt small in her oversized uniform and borrowed shoes. Most students spoke fluent English, confident, fast, and flawless. When Mira introduced herself in hesitant English, a group of girls giggled. Did you hear that accent? Mine whispered. Her cheeks burned. But instead of crying, she remembered her grandmother's words. A river doesn't stop when it meets a stone, it finds a way around. So Mira found her way. Every day after school, she stayed back in the library. She picked one English word, one phrase, one new sentence to master. She watched the librarian read aloud and mimicked her pronunciation. At night, she stood in front of a cracked mirror in their tiny room, repeating, I am strong, I am learning, I belong. She recorded her voice and compared it with English podcasts. The more she listened, the more she understood. The more she spoke, the braver she became. And then the storm came. One afternoon, a heavy rainstorm flooded her village. The tea stall collapsed. Her mother injured her leg. Her father lost his job at the school due to downsizing. They had no money, no security, just hope and Mira's growing English skills. I can help, she said. With shaky hands and a determined heart, she posted a small message on a local bulletin board. Spoken English for beginners, evening classes, very low fee, learn with Meera. It was risky. She was only 14. But people came. Some were children, others adults, all wanted to speak English, and they trusted the girl who had dared to learn it in the rain. By candlelight, with torn charts and homemade flashcards, Meera began teaching. Her very first student, her own mother. Pause and reflect. Have you ever used your skills to help your family or community? How did it feel when someone believed in you? This story shows that English isn't just a subject, it's a tool for change, for hope, and for impact. Learning English through emotional stories like this improves memory, motivation, and confidence. Comment below. Have you ever taught someone what you just learned yourself? Like and subscribe to Epic English Stories so you never miss the next part of Meera's journey. Months passed. The village began to whisper, not with doubt, but with awe. The tea stall girl teaches English now. She speaks so well. My son learned from her. He passed his interview. Meera had become a quiet revolution. She earned a few coins, but more than that, she earned respect, not just for herself, but for English learning. People no longer saw it as unreachable. They saw it as possible because Meera made it so. She used part of her earnings to buy second-hand books and a small Bluetooth speaker. Each night, she and her students listened to English stories. One rainy evening, her class huddled inside a tin shed, listening to a recording of The Little Prince. A student asked, Didi, why do stories help so much? Meera smiled. Because stories teach us how to live without making it feel like homework. But Meera didn't stop there. She began recording short English explanation videos on her father's old mobile phone. Her background was a wall painted by her little brother. Her tripod, a stack of rice bags. She uploaded them to a free video sharing site. At first, only 5 people watched, then 50, then 500. One day, a popular educational blogger shared her video. Overnight, her student count exploded. She began receiving messages from across the country. Ma'am, your story helped me speak in my job interview. Your words gave me confidence to start again. I learned English by listening to you every night. Thank you. Still, Meera was grounded. She cleaned the tea stall every morning. She taught classes by evening. And she never missed her habit of dancing in the rain. Only now her dance had a new rhythm, a melody of hope. Pause and reflect. Have you ever started something small that grew into something big? Which story or moment made you fall in love with English? Learning English isn't just about memorizing words, it's about sharing stories, helping others, and growing with every sentence. Stories like Meera's show you how powerful listening can be. You improve your vocabulary, your motivation, and your courage all at once. Share your thoughts. What's stopping you from starting today? Like, comment, and subscribe to Epic English Stories for part 5, the next chapter of Meera's inspiring journey. One morning, as sunlight spilled across her tiny room, Meera opened her inbox and froze. A woman named Roshni Verma had written to her. She was the program head of an English learning initiative hosted in Mumbai. Her message read, Dear Meera, I came across your videos. Your story, your passion, and your teaching style touched me deeply. Would you consider joining our annual Young Educators Conference as a speaker? Meera read it 5 times. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. She only whispered, Me. Tears welled in her eyes. She ran to her father and read the message aloud. He didn't say anything at first, just placed a hand on her shoulder, and then with trembling pride said, You've already spoken to the world. Now it wants to listen back. The next weeks were a whirlwind. Meera prepared her speech in English. She practiced day and night. Her mirror became her audience. Her rain soaked village became her stage. On the day of the conference, she wore a simple blue kurta and borrowed sandals. When she arrived in Mumbai, it felt like another planet. Glass buildings, speeding cars, and people speaking fluent English everywhere. She felt nervous, small, until it rained. It was light, gentle, but unmistakable. She smiled to herself. I'm not alone. When Meera walked on stage, the audience quieted. A girl from a village speaking to professionals, teachers, and students from across the country. And then she began, Good morning, everyone. I am Meera, the girl who danced in the rain and taught English from a broken tea stall. Today, I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to tell you if I can do it, you can too. Her voice shook at first, but then it rose, strong, clear, and full of life. She spoke about learning English through listening, through storytelling, through feeling every word. The hall was silent and then applause, standing ovation. Meera had danced in the rain. Now she danced on the world stage. Pause and reflect. Have you ever been afraid to speak in public or in English? What helped you rise above that fear? Listening to emotional, real stories trains your ears and inspires your heart. It's not just learning, it's living. Let Meera's story reminds you that learning English is not about perfection, it's about persistence. Comment your favorite line from her speech. Like and subscribe to Epic English Stories for part 6. The journey is far from over. After the conference, everything changed. But Meera remained Meera. News channels picked up her story. Blogs called her India's youngest English inspiration. Offers poured in, interviews, collaborations, and even sponsorships for her education. Yet, every time someone asked her, What do you want now? She answered with the same quiet smile, I want to teach more. I want to help girls who think they are too small to dream big. She could have moved to the city. She could have earned more money, studied abroad, worn new clothes. Instead, she returned home to the smell of wet earth, to the laughter of her little brother, to the villagers who now walk taller because of her. She reopened the tea stall, not just as a shop, but as a learning corner. She turned it into an open air classroom. A sign hung from the top: Learn English here, rain or shine. Girls who once feared speaking in front of their own parents now read poems aloud. Boys who had dropped out of school returned to learn grammar. Mothers who couldn't sign their name in English now read stories to their children, all because of one girl who refused to stop dancing in the rain. But the ripples didn't stop there. Meera launched a YouTube channel called Rain English, where she told short English learning stories, not in a classroom tone, but in the voice of someone who had lived every lesson. One video went viral: How I Learned English with Raindrops and Rejections. It was watched by over 2 million people in 2 weeks. A letter arrived next. It wasn't typed, it was handwritten by a girl from a remote village in Assam. Didi, I listen to your story every night. When it rains, I repeat your words. I believe I will speak English like you one day. Mira cried quietly when she read it, not from sadness, but from pride. She understood then. This wasn't her story anymore. It belonged to every learner, every struggler, every child who danced barefoot in a storm and dared to believe. Pause and reflect. What would you do if you knew your story could inspire someone else? What if your small effort today became someone's turning point tomorrow? This is why English stories are so powerful. They're seeds, and you never know how far their roots will grow. Listening to English stories like this improves not only your language, but your empathy, your focus, your memory. Tell us, who's someone you want to help once you become fluent in English? Like, comment, and subscribe to Epic English Stories. Years passed. Mira was no longer the small girl from the tea stall. She was now a young woman, respected, admired, and still deeply rooted in her mission. Her voice had reached millions, but her feet never left the muddy paths of her village. The tea stall had become a learning center. Her YouTube channel had become a movement, and her story had become a symbol of hope for learners everywhere. Then, one day, the rain returned, heavier than ever. The sky cracked open, thunder roared, lightning lit the night like a warning, and in just 2 hours, the village was underwater. Mira's house was damaged. The learning center was gone. Her books floating down the road like forgotten dreams. People gathered at the top of the hill, watching helplessly as the flood swallowed their world. Mira stood in silence, soaked, shivering, but not defeated. She looked at the children, frightened, cold, silent. Then she smiled. Let's tell a story. In the dark, in the rain, Mira began to speak, first softly, then louder. She told the story of the girl who danced in the rain. She told it in English, then in her native language, so that no one would miss a word. Children leaned in, adults listened, and for a moment the fear faded. Someone brought a candle. Someone else offered a plastic sheet for cover. Under that tiny shelter, surrounded by storm and ruin, Meera taught her most powerful lesson yet. We learn not only in comfort, we learn to survive, we learn to rise, we learn to lead, even when everything around us falls apart. That night, they didn't sleep. They learned, they laughed, they listened. In the middle of destruction, Meera created a classroom with no walls, no roof, no blackboard, only hope. When the rain stopped, rescue teams arrived. One officer said, "You've held this place together." Meera shook her head. "No, they held on to the story. I only reminded them of their strength." Pause and reflect. What would you do if your world suddenly collapsed? Could your words, your language, be someone else's shelter? Stories are more than entertainment. When you learn English through stories, you're not just memorizing, you're building emotional strength, understanding, and human connection. English stories, like Mira's, prepare you for real life. They build not just vocabulary, but resilience. Comment below. What would your story teach someone in need? Like, share, and subscribe to Epic English Stories. The flood changed everything, but also revealed something deeper. In the weeks that followed, Meera and the villagers rebuilt what they could. With no books left, she taught from memory. With no blackboard, she drew in the dirt. Her students wrote with sticks, their notebooks now replaced by the earth itself. And yet, no one missed class. The storm had taken roofs, but not roots. Then, one afternoon, a stranger visited the village. He wore a black coat and held a camera. His name was Ayush, a documentary filmmaker from Delhi. He had seen Mira's viral speech years ago and followed her journey ever since. "I want to tell your story," he said. Mira smiled. "You're already living in it." Ayush spent a week filming her classes, interviewing villagers, capturing the laughter of children learning grammar under open skies. He titled the film "Dancing in the Rain: The Girl Who Taught India to Speak." When the documentary released online, it spread like wildfire. Within days, Meera was invited to speak at the Global Youth Educators Summit in London. She hesitated. Her passport was new. Her English was still imperfect. Her clothes were simple. But her heart was ready. Her village gathered to send her off. School children waving signs that said, "Come back soon, Didi," and "Teach the world like you taught us." London was colder than she imagined. The stage was bigger, the lights brighter. But when Meera walked up to the podium wearing the same rain blue kurta from her first conference, she felt only calm. She began with a simple line: "I don't come from a place of privilege. I come from puddles. And from puddles, I learned to reflect the sky." She spoke about learning English through storytelling, about how listening daily changed her brain, her confidence, her future. She spoke about the girl who once danced alone in the rain and how millions now danced with her. The audience was stunned. Some cried, all stood to applaud. Pause and reflect. What would you say if you had 5 minutes on a world stage? How has English helped shape your dreams? When you practice English through emotional stories, you're not just training your tongue, you're building the courage to speak your truth. English stories like this give you confidence, fluency, and emotional connection. Comment: what's your favorite place to listen and learn English? Like, share, and subscribe to Epic English Stories. The conference in London brought Meera global recognition. She met educators, artists, students, and leaders from over 50 countries. Everyone wanted to talk to the girl who taught from a tea stall. One morning, just before she flew home, she received an offer from an international NGO. "We want to fund your education at a top university here in the UK. Full scholarship. After graduation, we hope you'll work with us on global literacy projects." It was a dream offer. Everyone expected her to say yes. A village girl, given the chance to change the world on a global stage. What could be better? But Meera didn't answer right away. Back in India, the villagers were waiting. The children kept the learning center running. Her little brother had taken her place as the temporary teacher, reading aloud from old storybooks. When she returned, they cheered. The streets were decorated with paper flags and hand painted signs. She sat alone that night under the stars, thinking she loved the idea of studying abroad, learning more, giving more. But something deep inside her whispered, "Don't forget where you began." The next morning, she gathered everyone and said, "I've made my decision. I will accept the scholarship. But after that, I'm coming back. I'm not running from this place. I'm rising for it. And when I return, we'll build something bigger, a school, a library, a movement." The crowd went quiet. And then applause. Cheers, tears. Her father hugged her tightly, whispering, "Now you're not just my daughter. You're the daughter of every dreamer." That year, Meera left for London again, but this time not as a speaker, not as a visitor. She was now a student. Every day she attended classes, she recorded short English tips for her students back home. She turned every lesson she learned into a story they could understand. Present perfect tense with a rain metaphor. Vocabulary from a London street. Confidence in English. Meera's daily tip. Her YouTube subscribers crossed 5 million. Her village school expanded with donations from around the world. Pause and reflect. Would you choose personal growth or community service if you had to pick just one? What if the right path is both? English learning, when rooted in storytelling, opens doors, not just for you, but for everyone who listens to your journey. Stories like Mira's teach more than grammar, they teach purpose. Share with us. Have you ever faced a life changing choice? What did you choose? Like, comment, and subscribe to Epic English Stories. 2 years passed. Meera returned to India, not with just a degree in education, but with blueprints, books, and bold ideas. She had kept her promise. The village gathered at the old tea stall, now faded and rusting, to welcome her. But Meera didn't speak right away. She walked quietly to the back of the stall where the first puddle had formed all those years ago. She smiled. This is where it all began, where I first danced, not because I was free, but because I wanted to be. Then she stood on a wooden platform nearby and said, "We're building a school right here, and we'll call it," she paused, "the Rainlight Academy." The name came from her childhood: rain for struggle, light for learning. With help from her subscribers, donors, and volunteers, construction began. Every brick was laid with love, every wall painted with color and hope. Children from nearby villages walked miles to help, carrying stones, painting murals, even writing English quotes on the walls like, "Mistakes are proof that you are trying." A rainy day can grow a brave mind. And at the entrance, carved in wood, founded by the girl who danced in the rain. On the first day of school, it rained. Of course it did. Meera stood at the gate with a smile, watching barefoot children splash into the courtyard. One small girl tugged at her kurta. "Didi, will you teach us to speak English like the rain too?" Meera knelt down. "Not just speak. You'll think in English, feel in English, and one day teach in English." The classroom bell rang. Not a metallic clang, but a soft musical chime, just like raindrops on a tin roof. Pause and reflect. If you could build a school anywhere, what would it teach? Who would you want to help most through your journey? Learning English through stories helps you not only master a language, but inspire a life. If Maria's story inspired you, remember, every time you listen to an English story, you take a step closer to your own rainlight moment. Comment. What would you name your own school? Like, share, and subscribe to Epic English Stories. The Rainlight Academy had been open for a year. Children now recited English poems confidently, presented weather reports from their villages, and even acted in short plays. Meera wrote herself stories about courage, kindness, and chasing dreams through stormy skies. Her YouTube channel had reached 10 million subscribers. Newspapers called her India's rain teacher. Universities called her for lectures. Brands wanted her for campaigns. But Meera never left her village again because her mission had found its roots. She now spent her mornings teaching, her afternoons creating content, and her evenings listening to children read out loud from storybooks under the banyan tree. Then one monsoon evening, dark clouds rolled in. The sky turned grey. Thunder rumbled softly, like a distant drumbeat, and the first drop fell on Mira's outstretched palm. She looked up and laughed. The children ran inside, but one little girl, barefoot, wide eyed, stood frozen under the rain. Mira walked to her. Scared? She asked gently. The girl nodded. Mira whispered, Want to know a secret? The child looked up. Mira said, The rain listens. When you speak in courage, it stops being scary. It becomes music. And then Mira stepped out into the center of the courtyard. She closed her eyes. She smiled. And just like all those years ago, she danced, not to impress, not to prove anything, just to remember who she was. Children peeked out the window, and then one by one they joined her. Dozens of tiny feet splashed in puddles. Laughter echoed, rain kissed the earth like an old friend. And there, amid the storm, stood Meera, leading a dance that was no longer hers alone. It was theirs. Pause and reflect. Have you ever danced in your own rain? What would happen if you did? Stories like this reminds us learning English is not just about language. It's about bravery, identity, expression, and the joy of sharing your journey. Thank you for being part of Meera's journey. If this story touched your heart, imagine how many lives it can inspire. Comment. What rain have you danced through in life? Share this story with someone who needs courage today. And most importantly, subscribe to Epic English Stories for more journeys that teach, inspire, and transform, one word at a time.